Nice. Like usual at the beginning of the meetings, if you would be so kind as to scroll to the bottom or click on that hyperlink where it says welcome, sign in below in yellow, and put your name and location, or LEA. Location LEA might be different these days. That helps us not only to respond to questions that come up, but also just to understand where across the state we have representation in each of the meetings. We do these kind of audits at the end of the year where we see which LEAs that across our agency we've served in some way. And so these conversations, we pull from those lists LEA names so that we can populate those circumstances. And are folks able to write in that document? Okay. Bummer. Anyone with the link can view. Anyone with the link can edit. All right, we can do a refresh. Is that actually a picture of you and your background, Jeff?
You know, I'd like to think so. When you guys were talking about warm weather, I was in San Diego a week ago. It was like 70, beautiful. And then I went night skiing last night and it was 2 below zero. And I thought, wow, San Diego felt pretty good.
I was in San Diego from Friday to Monday last week, Jeff.
We probably could have passed each other in the airport.
All right, next time. We'll get it. Okay, welcome to our early college coordinator meeting for January. We are excited to have some conversations today, just like last time, and I think we front loaded this at the beginning of the year. Our conversations this year are going to be a little data heavy, which is exciting for me, and I hope that is also exciting for you. We have pulled some data today connected to our second success criteria connected to retention, but we're also going to have some further conversations about that recruitment data that we shared last time, as well as we shared with the board. If anyone was watching the board standards and assessment committee meeting 2 Fridays ago, we had a 45-minute long early college update with them that was really positive, and the Chair Hansen, committee Chair Hansen, at the end of it was like, said something along the lines of, it's really good to have some positive news for a change. So the conversation went really well, and it was awesome to be able to highlight some of the great work that you all have done within the retention space. And so speaking of celebrating some great work, this morning, I'd love to get us started by throwing in into the chat or coming off mute and celebrating something that's going on within your circumstances. Maybe you want to celebrate a colleague, or I would be especially happy if someone wanted to celebrate themselves. Some circumstance that you have been facilitating or overseeing within your LEAs, a success that you've felt, whether it's a colleague or a friend. One thing that I would like to celebrate that I don't usually celebrate publicly is I'm wearing sweatpants this morning. I have worn a suit many days this week. I've been up on the hill and in the office, and so it's good to be business on the top and not business on the bottom. Other celebrations that folks would like to share? We would love to hear them. Jill, go for it.
Recently, a couple months ago, Utah, some representatives from Utah received some national awards for language programming. So Tooele School District received a national recognition of their K-12 DLI program, which is wonderful, which I'm happy about. And then I was nominated and awarded an award for innovation in K-12 education that I'm not saying is my award. I think it's everybody, including people who are here and all the things that you all are doing in the districts. But the focus of the award was how we have a lot of things going well in Utah, and language education is becoming part of innovation and service, and multilingual students just calling awareness. So that's the only reason why I bring it up, because it's such a broad, amazing effort. So you all are amazing.
Congratulations. That's so exciting to hear. And I hope that there's more than just that's the only reason that you're bringing it up. I hope that you're demonstrating your mastery of your work for other people. You should be super proud. That's super awesome to hear. Congratulations. Other celebrations this morning to get us started.
Okay, this is Sid.
Excellent.
So I got an email from Daryl Harris this morning. He's my good friend who used to be the concurrent director at Utah State University. And he said to me, tomorrow's your birthday, turning 65. And the answer is, my response was, well, I'm 63 today, so I better celebrate that 1 year for one more day. So, and I am taking today off except to meet with you guys and with Jill's meeting so that I can go do birthday type things.
I'm so sorry, Sid.
I'll forgive you tomorrow. You're going to Harmon's cooking class for my birthday with my cute husband. He's not planning to, but he's going to go do it, and that's all there is. He's going to smile. But you guys are stuck with me for a couple more years because I got a 21-year-old on my insurance and going to Salt Lake Community College. Appreciate y'all.
We appreciate you, Sid, and your 21-year-old that's keeping you with us longer. Any other celebrations?
I'll share mine. I don't know if you notice, I have a different background now. It's not very pretty yet, but we're finally in our new CTE center. And we opened and we now have students, and it's awesome to be back in a building with students. It's so good.
That's awesome, Camille. We look forward to the slow evolution of like pictures going up onto the wall. I don't know if your office was anything like mine. It took a year before I like got to all 4 walls. It was like 1 wall a quarter, roughly.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's awesome. Okay, one other thing that I wanted to celebrate is like last year, we did not have a ton, and I'll say we across most of our staff at USB didn't have a chance to get into schools as frequently as we had in the past. And so one of the things that has just like kind of lit my fire and kept me going this year is we've been doing a number of site visits for a PCBL initiative that we have kind of moving into the springtime. And it has just been so wonderful to be able to like learn like in-person learning again, teachers like taking the lessons that they learned during the pandemic to bringing it to this really frequent like hybrid circumstance, whether it's synchronous, asynchronous, or like all synchronous. There are so many communities in all parts of the state that are just doing such innovative and fantastic things, despite the fact that like from a public perspective, a lot of time, like lately, you know, the legislators or this legislative zeitgeist, to leverage one of my colleague Lindsay Henderson's words, is not like heavily pro education. There's a lot of like challenges within the education space, and so like if you don't get to see communities, that's all, like sometimes that's what you experience. But then when you go to these communities and you talk to the teachers and you see them with students, like it helps you to realize that like there's just a lot of talking heads that are like talking about things that they want to talk about within the broader conversation, but in the schools, like there's such positive things going on. And I know things are really challenging. I'm not trying to like ignore all the challenges of the moment. There's certainly things that we need to kind of approach head on, but it's just been so invigorating, or like reinvigorating, to be able to see communities talk to teachers and students, as I know that many of you get to do every day. So with that said, I like that. Happy unbirthday, Sid. Let's jump into our program for the day. I'll share our shared notes one more time. If you have not already done so, we would be so appreciative of you clicking on that welcome sign in below link and putting your name down at the bottom. that would help us to like be able to get in touch with you and or understand who is participating in these meetings. So we're going to have a couple of updates to start us off from initiatives that kind of touch early college. And our first update is an initiative that I have mentioned but not gone into detail about, and that is our CBMS Pathways work. Lindsay, you want to talk to our community about what CBMS is?
I would love to, and I recognize several faces that are in our CBMS Pathways committee, so this is really exciting. We partner with the Conference Board of Mathematical Sciences, and we have been engaged in work talking about our pathway opportunities for students in mathematics. And 2 years ago, we did a lot of work in the early college space, kind of aligning concurrent enrollment to what we had in the secondary math space. And this year we're focusing on that secondary math space. So we're kind of starting from the top down. So we're going from that secondary math 3 course and kind of trickling down through to 7th grade is generally where that starts. So we have 2 really great documents, and I call them great, not just because I love them and I made them, but because they get requested all the time. Like counselors and math teachers are constantly asking, where do these live? And the website can sometimes be overwhelming. So I just love to get those touches that let me know that they're being used. So this first document, I just dropped the link in the chat, kind of outlines our 3 early college pathways. We have Math 1030, a quantitative reasoning pathway. We have Math 1040, which is our statistical pathway. And then we have Math 1050, which is college algebra pathway. And we've kind of focused in we have focused in and put on there the careers that are associated with each kind of pathway so that students can have agency and their families can have agency in determining which math class is going to serve them the best after their high school career, and sometimes even in their high school career, because they can qualify for these courses in 12th, 11th, 12th grade. The other work, so we're moving down the pipeline into the secondary math space. So this document was made with parents and, oh, thanks so much, Nate, for sharing.
Oh, you want the parent one?
No, this is great. No, this is perfect. So this document trickles down into the secondary math space and is primarily supposed to be used so that parents and families and guardians and students can make choices about which math pathway they want to engage in. Not every student, historically, calculus has been kind of the capstone class for if you're a STEM student, you take calculus, but not every student, even STEM students don't need calculus in high school. So we wanted to show what are the different options that you can take in high school, where does your pathway link up to a post-secondary space, and how can you make informed choices about your future. And if you scroll down to the second page, Nate, we've included a lot of frequently asked questions that we get from parents and stakeholders so that they can help make the best decisions about what they want to do with their lives. So the key to these documents is we are messaging that parents, students, families are making choices, and educational stakeholders are giving information so that those choices can be educated choices about their future. Any questions I can answer? Nate, is there anything else you'd like me to speak to? Do you want me to speak about the current active work we're doing? And
if you could just give a summary of what the next 2 years, like the work that we're engaged in with regards to changing math pathways and how that might impact the kind of secondary early college space.
Absolutely. So in our CBMS steering committee, we are kind of weighing in. We're up for standards revision in secondary math in 2 years is what's on the schedule. Hopefully we stick to that because we've got lots of irons in the fire right now that are super exciting. And so we're going to take a look at those secondary math 1, 2, and 3, the content in those courses. And we're trying to decide which content is good for generalist mathematician training, for students to be an engaged citizen in their post-secondary careers and aspirations, and which math is specific to a certain pathway, like a calculus pathway or a statistical pathway or a quantitative reasoning pathway. And we want to parse those apart because we want students to be in the same pathway for all of those mathematical concepts that make them informed citizens for the future. And then we want to take out the specialized content so that students can engage with a pathway of their choice and put it in those types of classes. So that's the current work we're doing right now. We just had a really fun meeting last night where we looked at secondary math 3 standards, and we asked our steering committee, look at these standards, tell us what is for good citizenship, and tell us what is specific to most common right now is the calculus pathway, so that we can kind of separate those and make sure that we're not forcing calculus or calculus type material upon everybody, but we're giving students options to engage with that if they choose to be in a calculus pathway. So it's really fun. And also I'm going to use zeitgeist again because Nate said I own that word. So I love that ownership. In the zeitgeist right now nationally in the secondary math space is this concept of, in order to be a well-informed citizen, you have to have data literacy and quantitative reasoning skills. And so we're really looking at where can we infuse these new concepts that have just come to fruition in the last 3 or 4 years as being like essential. And where can we scale back that more specific content and put it in a specific pathway for students to engage in with choice.
Thanks, Lindsay. That's super awesome and a fantastic summary. Questions, comments for Lindsay? Wondering about this work? Maybe you want to be involved in it?
Yes. Fingers crossed.
In all seriousness, like, it is really important that we have stakeholders from all different perspectives involved in this work, so that when we arrive at pathways that we know support students, that communities not only can leverage them really quickly, but also, like, you all understand a lot of the implementation issues better than we do. So having perspectives from across the board allows us to arrive at solutions that work best for everyone. So if that is of interest to you, and I know some of you are already participating, Lindsay would be a great one to contact connected to that. And I'll throw your email in our shared notes as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Nate.
Awesome. If there are no other questions for Lindsay. Lindsay, thanks so much for your time. I know that you have another meeting that you are simultaneously engaged in. So thanks for your help and have a great day. Okay, Sid, it is your birthday it is your unbirthday, potentially. So we moved you up the agenda of updates. Feel free to go next so that you can go prep for your cooking class this evening.
Oh, no, I'm really grateful for that. And I'm going to go donate platelets too. And it sounds morbid, but you guys, if you donate blood or platelets, the cool thing is a phlebotomist treats you like a queen. They bring you treats, you watch a movie, and you cannot answer your phone or text for the duration of this visit. Super cool. On the agenda, Nate, you sent out the transfer guide. I don't know. That's the one topic I don't know what y'all want to talk about.
So Sid, I can share. I reached out to Steve a couple of times, and you can talk about it or not. I just wanted to make sure that resource was, everyone understood that it existed. So maybe if you could just describe what it is.
Okay.
And then if folks have questions, we can answer those. And then that second document, I do have a question about, but let's start with the transfer guide.
Yeah, okay. Transfer guide, they already provided the URL. I've sent you a URL to APIB. I want to say a couple things about concurrent CML for 22-23, and then we have a data pilot that I want to share. And so, okay, the transfer guide is a sandbox that the 16 institutions in the Utah system enter course information, and a student can go to it with or without creating an account, because I know in public ed we don't like students creating external accounts, and they can say, I've taken concurrent enrollment Art 1010 from Salt Lake Community College, but I fully intend to go to Weber State University. How will that transfer? How will Weber State University treat that Art 1010 course? And 20 years ago, the legislature sent a homework assignment to higher ed that says all credit transfers. And that's a ridiculous term because it's not that it transfers, it's how it counts when you show up at college and if it's going to work for the degree that you're going to study. Stupid example, my goddaughter took Psych 1010. She was at Salt Lake Community College. She's now at the University of Utah and she's a psych major and they wanted Psych 1100. So it tells you how courses transfer from one institution to the next. This is important for the concurrent program since roughly 2/3 of the students are taking concurrent classes from one institution, but after they graduate, they're going to go somewhere else. All right. And we should do, Aidan Cortez in our office is the transfer credit specialist. And sometime in the future meeting, I think once you've taken a few minutes to noodle with that environment, that platform, we should have him come do like a show and tell and walk you through it and explain the skinny details, if that's fair, if that's okay. Okay. So it's something that UC students who are concurrent students, should absolutely know exists. Good. So we'll do more in the future. The second thing is AP. And the link I put in the AP in the chat is the link to a web page on the Utah System Office website that lists all the changes that have happened to AP, IB, CLEP, and Dante's exams. It had to be, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, February 2020, almost too far for my old brain cells to remember, that we got a legislative homework assignment and the legislature said it's not right that kids are taking this AP exam, for example, and they're getting one type of credit at Utah State and a different type of credit at St. George and Dixie, and you need to codify so that all 8 institutions in the Utah system are awarding the same credit for the same score on the same exam. This is a huge task. And in truth, in many of the instances, a lot of the differences weren't really super huge, but to an outside person outside of higher ed, they seemed huge. It's also the case that I suspect, no disrespect, faculty hadn't looked at AP exams and IB exams for decades. They just have been on the books, so to speak. This spreadsheet, so what you see on the link I sent you is what majors committees have agreed to. There's 2 things about that. One is this may be more current than what you see on an individual institution website. It talks about dates of implementation, the 22-23 academic year, the 21-22 academic year, because they can have a faculty meeting in February, but then they've got all these calendars and they've got to go through committees and they've got to get it in the catalog, etc. So we have noticed instances where the institutions are not posting yet what they agreed to in committees, and Steve Hood in our office works on that. 2, it's also the case that you can't solve the world's hunger problems in one set of meetings, and there are still committees that need to work at ruffling out some of the things that are different. And part of my colleague Steve Hood's job is to meet with the majors groups who meet once a year and say, you can't make exceptions to this. You got to award this credit. So get in a room and we'll give you water and bread until you come out with a consensus of what you're going to award. So I would argue that you should look to this document. And if you see or you're told something different from a UC institution, you can call me or you can call Steve or you can call the concurrent director and say, what's that all about? Because this document is the official what majors committees agreed to. Okay. I will say, of all the things that touch concurrent enrollment, #1 enrolling class, English 1010. Biggest ruffling of feathers is what the English majors committees did with the award of credits for the AP exams and the IP exams. And there are certain parts of our state that were really bent out of shape about it. I think part of the outcropping is that in the end of things, they're awarding 3 credits less for AP literature and AP language cumulatively. And I've seen the documentation that committee went through. They talked to BYU, they talked to colleagues and peer institutions across the country. And in truth, dang it, we're recording this message, but I'll say it anyhow. I think they realized they were not awarding the appropriate credit for those exams, okay? They were awarding too much credit for one, not enough for another, etc. So they made an adjustment based on real serious evaluation, but change is hard. And I think that really, really frustrated folks. One of my observations is don't take both English language, English AP exams, take one or the other. And then take something else in AP if it's the case. Comments or questions? That's it.
Yeah, so I talked to I have had a back and forth with Steve since the December meeting,
yes,
prepping for this transfer guide. And to, like, Christy asked the question in the chat, like, are these up to date, both the transfer guide and the APIB? As I understand it, and as Steve has told me, the APIB credit is up to date as far as we know now. The transfer guide, because of the major meetings that you have suggested, is close to up to date, and like different major meetings for different content areas will meet like between November and like March. And so that transfer guide is mostly up to date, and not everything is up to date. So like Sid said, I just wanted to highlight what she mentioned. If there is something that is not comporting with what the transfer guide suggests, Yushi can help clear that out. Steve Hood and Sid Grubb, feel free to CC myself with regards to concurrent enrollment, or Christy if it's APIB related. Yeah.
I put Steve's email in the email box. Steve Hood was the provost for a while at Snow College, and he still lives in Ephraim, and he replaced Blair Cruz in her office, which some of you may or may not know who Blair is. Steve is like the best herder of faculty cats in those majors committees. He has this way of kind of sneaking up on you and saying, you can't make that exception. You guys have got to come to consensus in a way that you don't realize that you're being corralled, for lack of a better term. And so he's also going to turn 64 next month. And so both of us have our work cut out for us. So Nathan is right. The AP Awards is more current for today, but both of those things are organic documents and they change from one to another. The thing about the transfer guide is it's pretty complicated. It's complex data. And the institutions truthfully don't necessarily like us mining their backyard there. They like to do this all themselves, but then we identify transfer issues or transfer barriers and foibles. So that one is, Aidan Cortez is the contact for that one. We'll get him in a meeting. I'll talk to Nathan and get him to tell you more about that guide. And it's got great potential to provide really good guidance and advice and help for students, especially those that are in the concurrent world moving up. I'm going to put another document. Well, I'm going to put two documents, and I'm going to do this in reverse order because I can do it. There's one document. Hold on just one sec. I'm going to go really quick. And I'm going to go to the CE directors. And the second document I'm putting in here is a huge Excel spreadsheet. I don't think I just gave you anything secret, private. It's called the 22-23 CML summary. I will take black eye for this. We are supposed to publish that sucker at the end of December, and it's the end of January, and it's not quite done. I was very close to publishing it yesterday, except for one thing, and then I had a data entry problem, and the developer's working on something for me. I'm not going to bore you with it, but what you see in the Excel spreadsheet is my cheat sheet of all the things that had to be done to the current year's CE master list to update it for next year. 45 new courses, 44 retired courses, courses that are going on hiatus. All the diesel courses had to change because USB came up with new diesel strands and standards. So I'm hoping that that document gives you the overview of what you're going to see when you get to the CML. I need that because once it goes into a database, you kind of lose the changes, right? They kind of get absorbed into the DB. What I would point out, two things that I think are positive highlights for next year is that USBE, and this is in great part thanks to Nathan, finished its process on developing the college and career readiness standards. And we had 4 institutions submit courses that will align to those standards. I believe we will have 3 more institutions submit courses the following year. This is a curriculum that has great potential to serve all students, but it particularly also to be a knowledge space for underrepresented populations in the concurrent program. And we totally recognize that it's an organic document, and the strands and standards, and as well as what our institutions teach, are gonna coalesce and change over the next couple of years. But we're very, very grateful that that this curriculum was approved, and that we have 4 institutions that are working on this. For the institutions that aren't working on this, get with your CE director and say, what can we do to help you for the following year? The other thing that is holding me up a little bit is English 1010. And I'm going to just put you on notice with this one. English 1010 is the #1 enrolling course in concurrent enrollment. It is every year, and it's for a number of reasons, it's the #1 enrolling course. And one of the primary reasons, I think, is that most UC institutions will look at someone with a bachelor's degree in English and an MED, or a bachelor's degree in English in any graduate degree, and say that you're qualified to teach Introduction to College Writing, which I personally think you are. And there's a whole bunch of people that fit that criteria, a whole bunch of teachers that fit that criteria. We are having angst around the fact that different institutions had different enrollment conditions for this course. And we've had some superintendents that are pretty hot under the collar about this, and they're shopping around trying to find a different institution to approve English 1010. And we brought that, Steve and I brought that to the English majors in October, and we asked them to come up with a common enrollment condition. And it is the end of January, and we're very, very close. What I will say to you is, and I'm going to have to talk to Nathan and the language arts secondary specialist about this also, is that what they're moving towards is completion of language arts 11 with a C or better. No, completion of language arts 9, 10, and 11 with a C or better in language arts 11 only. And a recommendation of senior year. Okay. And if in fact the kid, it's kind of very similar to math. If in fact a student doesn't have a C or better in that class and hasn't taken 3 years of language arts, we turn to the ACT scores, or we turn to the AccuPlacer scores, or we turn to an IB score, and we say that it's a little squishy. Talk to the concurrent director about that and work it out. It's very similar to math. I'm very much aware of the fact that 2 of our institutions, Utah Valley and Southern Utah, have year-long English 1010 courses. And I've talked to them about how we can massage these conditions. But in defense of the completion of Language Arts 11, when a student shows up on campus and signs up for English 1010, they will have shown up with 4 years of language arts from high school. Yes? 4 years of language arts, not 2 years. So they're taking it instead of Language Arts 11. And this is what Nathan and I and the language arts specialists and smarter brains than me have to kind of coalesce how that core code is being represented in the cactus list, because some folks want to substitute it for Language Arts 11, and that means that kid's going to be taking college freshman composition with 2 less years of writing than a kid that shows up on campus. So how do we massage this and work it out? We created angst with the AP and the IB. We might as well create angst with the concurrent enrollment condition for English. I'm really sorry, but hopefully when you see it, when I get the last 3 chairs to say yes, you can provide me feedback, because our interest is ensuring student success in the course, not trying to create another barrier. The other thing and that's what I'll say about CML, it'll get out there, damn it, next week, no matter what, hell or high water, it'll get out. Be on the website, and I'll tell Nathan, he can let you know. Final thing I put in the chat is a small data pilot project, and this has been shared with your concurrent directors, but it wasn't shared until December, kind of before Christmas. And I've talked to 3 of the directors, and they've already talked to high schools, and they have got some amazing plans coming in. I mean, I'm in awe of what high schools want to do. But basically, the Utah System of Higher Education, its current strategic plan, and I'll only take 2 more minutes, I'm sorry. Its current strategic plan focuses very, very heavily on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it focuses on closing gaps. And as you well know, we have a 10% gap in the concurrent program in the state with regard to race, ethnicity, 10% more white Asian students than in your high school populations. I haven't gotten this data from Kristen yet this year, but last year we were at like a 22% gap on income level of low-income students participating in the concurrent program. What this pilot proposes to do, and it's only 2 pages, I think you could skim it quickly, is provide some funding for high schools to data mine their students. our data in a bunch of pilots in the past 7 years tells us that if you look at your sophomore class, for example, and you look at the whole class, eliminate anyone who's already signed up for AP, IB, or concurrent enrollment, the students that are left are going to be disproportionately low-income, first-generation students of color. And so what we're proposing is do some sort of a data mining project, which I think would actually shoe into what you have to do for USBE with data. And you could talk to Nathan about that. And identify students that you think are qualified, invite them to participate in concurrent enrollment, and spend that money if you have to pay their application fee and their $5 to credit. Spend that money. We have one high school that's spending that money to sponsor a homework call during the day for concurrent enrollment students. We're having another high school that's proposing campus tours with that money. So do something that not only identifies the students and gets them into a class, but engages them in thinking of themselves as college-going students, as being part of a college-going culture. I hope that if you haven't heard from your CE director yet, it's because I was naughty and didn't get permission from the commissioner until right before Christmas break, and then school started. But if you think that there's something that you can do with this pilot, contact him and say, so let's go to lunch. And we would be very grateful to have this kind of stuff work. And something else is in the back of my head, and I'm getting old and it just went out the door. So thank you for your time, Nathan. I'm sorry.
Sid, you're not getting old till tomorrow.
Okay.
You're still young. Well, I'm sure we have several questions connected to these circumstances.
Yes.
One thing that I want to say before we go to questions is, I've definitely gotten some nervous emails about the CML being published, just because people are starting to build their schedules for next year, and so they want to know, especially with regards to that CCR course.
Absolutely.
That's been the specifics, but all of those. So, and you know this, you're totally aware, but just to make it a transparent communication. And then I saw several people with hands. Oh.
You know, really quick about CML is, I think it was holding us up was a timing issue where a lot of the changes to the curriculum was stuff that the board didn't approve until December. And after our deadlines, and then a specialist has to have time to review a proposal after the board's approved, and so it just took us a while. I can publish CML without the English if I need to on Monday. The developer's fixing my bug that I found, and we can publish it, and it'll just in the enrollment condition it will say check back next week. So we will get it out by Monday. I just want to take part of today off, but it will happen. And I really apologize. It's a black eye on my part.
And to be transparent, Sid, I am just as accountable as you. You know that it took me until early January to approve those CCR courses.
I wasn't going to say anything.
This is not I want to be transparent again with the community. This isn't Yushi. It's just we are doing our best to get it out ASAP.
Yeah, it won't happen again. Next year, too much stress being late. So
Sid, Brett has a question in the chat that says, for the schools offering year-long English 1010, what are they teaching for the other half of the semester?
For year-long 1010, they're teaching year-long 1010, and I'm going to basically. Gosh, I wish you weren't recording, but I talked to Southern Utah and Utah Valley, the two that offer a year of 1010 and a year of 2010. I taught college writing at DU for 10 years. I would have killed to teach that course for a year. Yes, it would have been so cool. But for them, I'm gonna make it a pilot, and one of the conditions is that they bring the information of why they think 1010 year long is a good thing back to the English majors next year, and then they can have an ongoing conversation about concurrent enrollment, their favorite topic. With the ones that are teaching English 1010 for a semester only, part of my it's not a frustration, but my observation was, if you're only taking a semester of English 1010, how are you achieving the 4 years of language arts required for graduation? Kevin Simmons down at Dixie wants to noodle with doing English 2200, which is understanding literature for half of a year, and English 1010 for half of a year. And I think the good thing about that is 2200 is humanities general education credit. So you're going to get your composition core gen ed credit with the 1010, and you're going to get a humanities breadth credit with the 2200. And 2200 will allow you to practice writing more. Okay. So if 1010 gives you some of the mechanics, 2200 gets you the practice. So that's one thing I've heard, is that's what they're going to try and do. And if Kevin does that with his partners down in the southern end of the state, what they do if they offer 2010 for half a year, I don't know what they're doing for the second half to get that 4 full years of language arts for graduation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and frankly, like, this is probably a conversation we need to have as an entire community. When the norm has been 1 high school credit for 3 higher ed credits, and that full year experience is the way that we interpreted language arts credit. We just need to talk about the ramifications of that. So when we get the final word from you, I think we'll put it on our agenda. April's a long time away. We might have to have like a special interest group conversation.
Yeah.
April's our last meeting of the year, just so that we can work through the challenges that will result from that.
Please note,
set students up to not have those 4 full year experiences of English.
Please note on 1010, I mean, my goddaughter and my son are both in college now. They need 4 years of English from you people badly. They desperately need it because it's not going to prepare them otherwise for college. When you finally see the final consensus of the enrollment condition for 1010 and 2010 English, it's going to be the longest one in the CML. So you just have to scroll for the big fat, text field. It's trying to navigate 8 different institutions, and there is language that says may be considered. So we say, we want you to finish language arts 11, and we want you to get a C or better in that last course. And then if you haven't done that, these other things may be considered. That language is permissive. And that language goes back to the institutions, and it gives Snow College the opportunity to say, we want an ACT score of 18 or 19 or whatever. And it gives Southern Utah the opportunity to say, we'll take a 17, but take the Accuplacer exam. So there is more than one on-ramp. The only one they could agree to was Language Arts 11. My daughter took Language Arts 11 as a 10th grader. And Utah Valley's current requirement for their year-long English 1010 in 11th grade is Language Arts 11 as a 10th grader with I think they wanted a C. I can't remember the grade they wanted. So it's going to still be the highest enrolling course. It still will be. And that's just the way it is. But what would hopefully be the case is that Washington School District goes to Dixie, and JUEP goes to Snow, and Provo goes to Utah Valley, and we don't shop or spend our energy shopping around for a better enrollment condition. That's kind of nutty. But my only other comment about, the pilot I sent you is that pilot is math money. So part of the data mining has to be engaging in math. But I noticed this year that Senator Milner is floating something in and around English language. And I think there is a growing interest on the part of the USHE to not only continue to support math, of course, but also to look at English. And as another barrier to students, especially ELL students, low-income students, and first-generation students getting into college. And several of the institutions are piloting co-requisite English courses, just like we have co-requisite math courses. So hopefully that's something that we can fold into this whole huge conversation in the next 2 years.
Awesome. Jill, I think you had a question?
Yeah, I guess maybe I just need to read. I'm having trouble reading the little print, but that was my question, is if you can fold in multiple subject areas or if it's just math right now.
Oh, this is my wink, wink, nod, nod. It's Senate Bill 196 money. So we need to look at students we're going to mine all students. And one of the things we look at is the students that have a C or better in secondary 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And with my goddaughter as an example, she came to China at the age of 11 or something. If she had given the opportunity, she would have taken math, and she would have done very well in math. The next kid around might be, I'm terrified of math, but I don't mind history, or I don't mind psych. If you're telling me I can do it, I'll do it. And so we do need to give a nod to math here. We got to be very careful about that. And hopefully the fact that Senator Milner is looking at English this year, and the fact that we're doing this and we're being sensitive to where the money comes from, we can use the data we gather from these to go back to her and say, can we expand the pipeline to do more subjects?
In the future.
Hopefully. She did such good work for math. We just now want her to do good work for math and English and other stuff.
Right.
So yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Any other questions for Sid connected to UT circumstance? Maybe the data project, maybe the CMO publishing next week, maybe the transfer guide. All right, Sid, happy birthday.
Thank you guys very much. Jill, call me when you're done. I sent you an email.
Have a great day. Thanks so much. Okay, jumping into our next item. I'm not going to spend a ton of time with this. I just wanted you all to know that if you weren't able to see the Standards and Assessment Board update, the slides that I used for that update, that Christy and Trish and I used for that update are linked here. I was the one that linked them, the slides that we built together. And there is one thing that I want to point out in this, which was exciting and part of the reason that it was such a positive experience for the board members, I think. Sharing screen, going to the top here. We've looked at these data sets for a while. I'm sure that you've seen this at some point, but we just added 2021. And in particular, if you look at the student groups that are represented in this graph across early college circumstances, we see one really steep increase in participation in early college courses, and that's students learning English. The couple of things that I would love to point out to folks in celebration, this is my kind of biggest celebration of the year for sure. 2018, when we started this process about having kind of targeted conversations with closing gaps for underrepresented student groups, and the application and reporting process became a little more formalized. What we can see between 2018 and 2021, in spite of the pandemic, is every one of those lines are increasing. So we're increasing participation for every single student group, like both students experiencing economic disadvantage and those that aren't experiencing economic disadvantage. In addition, we noticed that a couple of those groups, one in particular, is increasing faster than the rest, and that's students learning English. And this is hard to see in the graph, but students eligible for SPED services increase slightly faster than the kind of students not receiving SPED services, which you can't see on this graph. So that is a testament to the work that you are doing within the field. Is like, it's hard to move statewide data. Like when we see 2% changes, we're like, awesome, this is exciting. And in this case, we saw a shift from, in a span of 3 years, we saw 13% of students in 2018 that are learning English participating in early college coursework. In 2021, that was 21% of those students. Is that high enough? Like, we probably still have some progress to make, but that's a huge jump. One that, if you look at historic data, it was flat for years and years. So I just wanted to celebrate the great work that you all have been doing in this space. And like, it is actually like moving the bar. We are changing the state. One other thing I want to draw attention to that we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next section is our recruitment high flyers. So we highlighted these 9 LEAs because of their ability to grow participation for their overall programs and their student groups experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage of particular race, SPED services, or language learners by 10% or greater. And in addition to this, so we'll talk about this a little bit more. We're going to have the opportunity to hear from some of these communities. But in addition to this, we also added something to our application this year that we mentioned, and you may or may not have noticed, and that is the question about assets. So we've had a few discussions, or maybe a few mentions in our first 2 meetings of the year about this idea of asset-based practice. And we are really excited to incorporate this more kind of holistically into the structures of early college experience. And that is, oftentimes when we look at underrepresented student groups, we think about, the word gap just means like, oh, those students aren't participating or they're not performing at the same level. And so there's deficits there, right? Like that student is at a disadvantage. But that's not the only side of that coin. The other side of the coin is that those student groups bring unique assets to the conversation that if we leverage appropriately, we have opportunities to change the way that their and other student groups' experiences of education look like. And so what we did was we kind of gathered some of the assets that were mentioned within the application, and we shared those assets with the board. Here's a kind of smattering of them. But the one that came up the most in the concurrent enrollment data, and you'll see this later on, are what I have called the benefits of heterogeneity, just because it's fun to say. But what I mean by that is when our classes don't, and I use the term look loosely here, they don't look like one another. So that may be look like, it may be like perform like, it may be think like, it may be their dispositions are different, but there are benefits to that heterogeneity. So frequently in historic education, we've looked at homogeneous classrooms as being the easiest and most successful. And what we're seeing is a shift from that viewpoint, as evidenced by this data across the state, that there are benefits to classrooms having not everyone looking the same, not everyone thinking the same, bringing different background knowledge and like their assets to bear on the educational space. And so we look forward to the opportunities that the benefits of heterogeneity bring to our classrooms. And like I said, we'll talk more about that. If you want to look at the other slides, feel free to jump in. A lot of them are ones that you've seen before in other settings. Okay. Next up, next early college meeting. It's the same one you have on your calendar, but just as a reminder, that will be April 12th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. It'll be the last meeting of the year. And we look forward to seeing you at that time. Sounds like we may need to bring a 10-10 group together to talk about ramifications of half-year English versus full-year English courses. And then finally, we wanted to provide a few legislative updates, both anticipated and unanticipated. I was on the Public Ed Appropriation Committee meeting on Friday of last week because it said concurrent enrollment recommendations from the LFA. So the LFA is the Legislative Fiscal Analyst, and his name's Ben Leishman. He makes recommendations to this Appropriations Committee about what should happen with the funding. I saw concurrent enrollment on there and I was like, uh-oh, I don't know why it's there. No, I hadn't talked to Ben since like October, so I didn't know what was going to happen. And when we got to the meeting, I was pleased to find out that he recommended an increase of $1.7 million in ongoing funds for concurrent enrollment loosely in order to backfill the burden that you all have been having to deal with because the growth in concurrent enrollment credits has outstripped the growth in funding. So that doesn't mean that money is coming, and there's a lot of weight that comes with the LFA's recommendations. If you want to go back and watch that meeting, he showed some truly remarkable graphs. So if you're a data nerd, it's worth checking out. Otherwise, just knowing that $1.7 million may be coming our way is maybe worthwhile. The other piece is, and we don't have bill language connected to this yet, but Representative Snow is interested in running a bill this session connected to changing the way that funding goes to AP, the kind of funding mechanism for AP, and biasing that funding towards students experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage. So again, I don't have the language yet, so I can't speak really specifically to this, but as we spoke with him, Christy and I kind of worked through what those recommendations might look like. And where we are at the moment is that money for covering any expenses that students experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage receive. Any fees or money that they have to spend would be reimbursable by the LEA. And that money would be like, I'm going to use the term reimbursed, but don't hold me to that when, if this would actually get passed, that money would be reimbursed first before the remainder of the allocation would go out. The hope is that we'll also increase that AP allocation to account for this, but the idea, like globally, is that all expenses that students experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage in AP circumstances would be covered by statute rather than by LEA choice, which I know some of you already do that, and it would be a circumstance in which all LEAs would have the opportunity to do that. Okay, I won't be able to answer specific questions, but happy to field any general questions connected to legislation for the 2022 general session. Seeing none, let's jump into our first interactive activity for the day. And I apologize in advance for, or I apologize for the extended talking at session. We're excited to do some participating now.
All right, awesome. Nathan, do you mind making Ava a co-host so she can be in charge of the breakout rooms for this, please? As Nate was talking a little bit earlier about the celebrations, this is one of the focal points that we want to share in our professional learning community. Is just being able to focus on some of those things that are really happening that are making a difference. So we are going to focus on the high flyers in recruitment, especially in the area of early college. Last year's data looked at the efforts to increase representation in the student groups. So if you look at the agenda, and Nathan, I did adjust this for the time. So if you look at that, it has been modified. At first, we're just going to highlight a couple of those high flyers. We have Granite, who said they would be willing to share out, as well as Twila. So I believe Sherry's here and Corey and Jennifer are here. So we'll just take about 7 minutes to have them share that time frame of what's working, what they've noticed, what are some of the patterns, things that they've been able to do in their LEAs. And after they have shared, we're going to go out into breakout rooms. And we will have 4 different breakout rooms. There'll be an urban, a suburban, a rural, and a charter. And you're welcome to self-select whichever group you would like to go into, whether it's looking at one that's similar to the LEA that you are in, or if it's you want to hear someone specifically that's in a different group. Feel free to jump into one of those 4 different breakout rooms. And we will do that for about 10 minutes. During that time frame, we'll just be doing some discussing and question and answering among the breakout groups. And if you will look on that 3rd sub bullet down, if you will assign someone within your group to take notes, if you click on that link below, the hyperlink says see table below for notes, you can scroll down on the agenda and see that they are broken down into 4 different groups. You can click into there. Nate and I are going to jump into some of those rooms, and he and I will act as a scribe in the groups that we jump into. So we'll just need 2 other people in the 2 other breakout rooms. And then afterwards, we want to come back and share just what are some of the highlights that you noticed from being in the breakout groups and things. And again, we apologize for the condensed time frame on this. We did have a lot of information from Yushi, but even though it is a shorter time frame on this, we really want it to be a powerful time to celebrate those schools that are doing well, but a moment for us to reflect and go, what can we take back to our LEAs that's being so successful? So let's go ahead and have Sherry start on that. And we will do the breakout rooms after we have the share out. Ava.
Thanks, Christy. I'm going to share. I primarily have to give credit to our high schools and the great work that they do, and I try to support them in that. And we have James Taylor here who can speak to anything that CE. So my experience is primarily with AP. That's my area of responsibility. James does the CE courses. But some things that I think have made a difference is really targeting with our administrators this. We have, we use our AP fees, part of our AP fees. First, Granite holds our AP fees at the district level. We don't send them out to the school. So we support from the district level. But we have used our AP money to supplement AP exam fees for free and reduced lunch students. So we had surveyed our students through our partnership with Equal Opportunity Schools, and one of the biggest barriers that students told us to participating in AP courses was the exam fee. So we decided that had to be a high area of focus for us, was making the exam fees reasonable for a student to take an AP exam. So that's the first thing we did that came from the district level. The second thing that high schools have really been doing and focusing on is leveraging personal relationships with kids. So they have, part of our research showed that kids need multiple invitations. Students that typically would not take an early college class, they need multiple invitations to participate in the class. So it needs to be more than the high school counselor coming and doing the, hey, you ought to take AP or CE, here's the benefits. It's a personal teacher reaching out, a trusted adult saying, you can benefit from this and this is why, and there'll be support there. So that personal connection, and hoping to create a sense of belonging. So we've had several teachers at each school that reach out and really encourage kids to enroll in the course. And then that's had to also, part of that has had to be the principals being mindful of who's teaching the AP course. Is it someone that's welcoming and creating a sense of belonging in the course? Or is it a teacher that's saying, hey, look left, look right, and half of you aren't going to be here mid-year? So teachers that create sense of belonging and make the kids want to be there. Another thing that we really tried to do is schools have come up with steps to reduce students dropping the course, that, you know, getting in and kids feeling like the course is too hard and immediately wanting to drop. So some of our high schools have come up with kind of an intervention plan for kids that if they're struggling in AP and they come in, they want to drop, they don't immediately let them drop. They come up with this intervention plan to help them continue and give it some more time. And traditionally, what we're seeing is students given more time and more support tend to then get over that initial hump of the course being challenging and stick with it. So like I say, all the credit goes to our schools and the great work that they're doing out there. And those are just a few of the things that came to mind, but I did have to caveat this with, we have seen a significant drop in enrollment from when this data was probably related to COVID. And I think that's just a nationwide trend that we're seeing, but I'm glad we look good this year because it may not be as good next year, but thanks for letting us share.
Thanks, Sherry. We do appreciate you sharing out, and it's fun to learn about some of the things that have gone well and what you guys have done to work through this, you know, the epidemic as well. Let's go ahead and have Jennifer share out a little bit of what they're doing in Tooele. Jennifer.
Okay, so first of all, we have to thank our high schools as well. They're the ones who do most of the work, and it's great to see that we have excelled in this area. A couple years ago, USU brought out their diversity team to speak to our counselors and admin and as well as our CE coordinators to talk more about diversity and how we can bridge this gap. So we discussed some ways with all of the high schools, and then we took it actually back to our high schools. And one of the ways that we're actually sending letters out to eligible students, not only in English, but in Spanish. And I think most of the focus this time was for the Hispanic group. So they sent the letters out in Spanish as well as English. There were concurrent enrollment presentations in the Latinos in Actions clubs, and which really hadn't happened before. And with the teacher of that class, he was really supportive of, encouraging the students to do early college. And then the counselors also put more focus on the areas where the students excelled. So if there were, if a student did really well in an auto class, they would talk to those students and say, hey, why don't you try auto 1010? And so those are the things that we have done. Hopefully our numbers will look good next year. I'll have to look at the data to see where we're at, but that's what we did.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jennifer, what you guys have been doing in Tooele.
You're welcome.
Again, just in the interest of time, we're going to quickly have you guys now jump into some breakout rooms, and there will be 4 of those breakout rooms.
Christy, can we have new aims on. I don't know if Kelly Booth might be at her computer at the moment and would be interested in talking about new aims. Someone just dropped. I was like, did Kelly, when she heard her name, did she just jump out of me? Hey, there's Kelly.
I was trying to turn on my computer, sorry. I was trying to turn on my video.
You're totally great. Sorry to interrupt, Christy. Kelly, I don't know if you heard both Tooele and Granite share some strategies. Yeah, because you have a different kind of setting and circumstance than them. I bet folks would really love to hear about some strategies that y'all are using.
Okay, well, strategies that we've done to help improve our diversity, our underrepresented populations, but also just going after female students and trying to get them more excited about participating in early college opportunities and things like that is we start early and try to shape that behavior as sophomores. And so we do seminars with our sophomores and we start to introduce. Our counselors run all our seminars and they come in and they start to talk about what classes are available, what pathways are there. And then we have concurrent enrollment in AP, but then we actually have also an early college program where a scholarship is tied to that, where we pay the tuition for those college classes for students. So we use AP and concurrent enrollment kind of as the step to get up to the early college program. So that helps as well. And then we also have used, which I'm sad this funding went away, but we were paying our teachers out of, different funds, and you've got COVID funds and all that stuff right now that you could use, but we were paying them to set up individual 10-minute meetings with each student, 5-minute individuals with each student who has a grade below a B. So, and those were happening on our half days. We have our Friday half days. Those were happening after school, and it's really easy when it's via Zoom. And so just having the teacher make that connection one-on-one, and the question they ask is, what supports do you need in this class to keep you in this class? What do you need? And a lot of good has come out of those. Like we had one student, well, the internet at my house isn't very good. And so the teacher was like, well, we can figure that out. Let's get you, an internet card, or why don't you stay here and work until this time? The school is always open. Things like that have really helped. Another thing that we've done is we've held large group seminars for those classes where not for our CE 1050 class. So not all the teachers are doing a tutoring session on Friday, but anyone who's in that class can come to a tutoring session on Friday to help support those students. We had all our documents translated in Spanish. That has seemed to help as well. I'm trying to think of other ones that haven't been mentioned, but it's a great thing. But really, I think the challenge coming off COVID, if I'm being honest, is no one wants to attempt anything difficult because everyone's burnt out from COVID. I think that's the biggest challenge we've seen as an institution. And so we've really had to let students and parents and advertise that, you'll get the support you need. Let's just start early and let us know you need that support until we're too far down the line to go back. But I do think that a lot of underrepresented populations, it sounds scary and it sounds intimidating. And so we're trying to reframe that message as, we'll walk the journey with you and you'll have support the whole way.
Thanks, Kelly, for being willing to be on the spot and just
Well,
highlight what's
hey.
going on.
I know I'm trying to think of other ones. If I think of any other ones, I'll pop in.
Okay. And with that invitation, Kelly, is there anybody else that would be wanting to share just real quickly before we move into the breakout rooms? Jesse, was your hand raised for us or for someone else in the room? Okay. All right. Again, thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate, Granite, we appreciate New Ames, and we appreciate Tooele sharing all that information with us. Let's take a few minutes now and jump into our breakout rooms. Again, you can see that they are being assigned out. You're welcome to jump into the 4 different ones. There's for urban schools, suburban, rural, and charter. Feel free to jump into the one that you feel categorizes your school the best. But also, if you want to jump into another one just because you want to hear what's going on in a different school, feel free to do that as well. And if you're not able to jump in, go ahead and turn off your speaker and let us know, and Ava will help us to jump into those.
Christy, I'll go to suburban. We probably, I think Brett went to rural. Oh, Brett's with Millard. Corley / Jennifer. Does Tooele, would you call it suburban or rural?
We have some schools that are rural, Dugway and Wendover. So I would say
Okay.
I would love to go to that room.
Cool, that'd be great. Thanks. And Kelly, do you mind going to the, oops, she's already on it. Jumping over. Jeff, Kelly's jumping into that room. We'll be there shortly.
Okay, and Jenny, which room did you want to jump into? Oh, she already jumped. Awesome.
Okay. So
Carly's with Tooele.
okay, I'm actually gonna go to rural because Jennifer went to the suburban. And then Christy, maybe do you want to go to charter since there's only 2 people there?
Yeah. And Ava, if you don't mind just helping if people pop in and out, that would be awesome. I think Carly is with Tooele, so I'm assuming that would be with suburban. So if you can put Carly in with suburban, that'd be great. Awesome, thanks.
Eva, I don't know that I've met you. What school are you from, our district?
I'm from USB. I'm the executive secretary for the STEM team.
Oh, good to meet you.
Nice to
I'm
meet
Jesse
you, Jesse.
Hennifer. I'm from Canyon School District.
Awesome.
Great meeting
All
you.
right. Welcome back, everyone. I think we've got everyone back from our groups. We wanted to just say we had some great conversations in the group I was in, and we would love to just kind of hear what you guys shared in your own breakout rooms. We hope that you had a moment to take notes and add that to the boxes below, just so people can come back and see the notes that they had on these different schools and get ideas. So again, just volunteers, anyone want to share out some of the things that you were talking about or discussing in your breakout rooms?
Yeah, if you want, I'll go first. We, as you know, or maybe you don't know, that school counselors are required every year to do specific data projects, try to improve the success of students. And we've got some counselors that decided to make increasing equity amongst minorities to college level courses the focus of their data project. And I'm not saying it's anything earth shattering, but they're pretty excited. that there are early attempts to meet one-on-one during those parent conferences with the students and make them aware that they probably have good enough grades. There's avenues of funding. We can waive any fees. Brett talked about Snow College partnering with helping with costs if there were associated costs. And just that personal connection with the counselors and the parents seems to have been gotten off to a pretty good start last year, and they're excited to see how that ends up this year. So nothing earth-shattering, but something they're excited about. So we're excited about it too.
George, can I just say what I love about this idea is that it's leveraging resources and like a system that already exists. So you're not having to like build this new thing. You're leveraging something that all counselors already do. And you're kind of building advocates for the community through the process. So that person, after they look at the data, then all of a sudden, like they're advocating for that larger idea. Awesome work in Miller.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for sharing, George. Anybody else feel inclined to share some of the things that you've been learning from the other schools that were in your breakout rooms?
Chrissy, I think we should make urban and suburban share because they didn't take notes.
Oh, Nate.
I'll share.
Oh, thanks, Jesse.
So I was in with Granite, and I'm always impressed. I love what they do out there. So it's always great to hear some of their strategies. We were talking about just the specific actions that they've taken based on equity. So surveys for barriers and what their barriers were. And we talked a little bit more about the details of how they, as a district, pay for their students who are identified as low income for those AP tests. And just by reducing that barrier, prioritizing it, saying this is what we're going to pay for, it got that barrier out of the way, and then it allowed them to look at the funding that was left and what they could use that for. And that's still something that down in Canyons in our side, we're still looking at and still having discussions with our principals, because our principals do awesome at their schools, but what is it that I can do or the district office can do to support getting one of those barriers out of the way, just taking care of it so that they can focus on more individualized needs. And so that was the big discussion that we had there, and just the differences in how Granite, that their funding stays at the district, but it's easily, principals are easily access it. Whereas I have always, out of tradition, I think, separated that money, and then what that looks like for equity when some schools need more than others. So those were discussions we had.
Sounds like you had some great discussions in there, Jesse. Thanks for sharing. I love hearing about how that barrier is just being pulled away when you talk about that financial barrier. It's gone. So let's move on to the next barrier and see what else we can do to make a difference, right? Okay, suburban volunteers.
I can tell you what we talked about. Allison, I don't remember what district. You're Bear River School District, aren't you? Is that right? Anyway, she was asking. Box Elder, sorry.
Bear River District
Okay.
is like Cash, Logan, all of those.
Oh, okay. So Box Elder. Anyway, she was asking about IVC and how we in Davis School District have used IVC to give that access to students in other schools that don't have the access to specific CE courses. We began mostly with history. At that time, a couple of years ago when we were doing it, that was our course that we couldn't get enough teachers in the district to be able to teach. So we talked about that, and then we talked a little bit about scholarshiping students. That's already kind of been talked about. So if anyone else in my group wants to add to that.
Awesome. Thanks, Camille. We appreciate hearing all that. And as you can know, can see, we have added, Nathan and I've added some of the comments that you guys have talked about from those different breakout rooms. And we hope you guys will come back and use that as a resource, because there's a lot of things that overlap that some of you are doing that are similar, but there are some very unique ideas as well that can be structured and brought into the different school districts, whether it be urban, suburban, rural, or charter schools. So thank you so much for sharing. In the interest of time, I think we will jump on to the next section, Nathan, just because we do have a lot on our agenda still to look at. But thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for helping and supporting and celebrating what we're doing to help increase representation for our students. And congratulations to our high flyers.
Awesome. Thanks, Chrissy, and thanks to everyone for sharing those insights. I think it's worthwhile to talk a little bit about the rhythm of that we've planned throughout this year for these early college meetings. And maybe you've already experienced this, but we spent last year engaging all of you in conversations regarding what success looked like within the early college stage. And so we ended up with those 4 success criteria: retention or recruitment, retention, pipeline, and course efficacy is what we called them. And so what we did in December was we worked with our data department to pull some data specific to recruitment. And then we gave that to you at kind of the end of the meeting, allowed some time to dig into it, ask questions, and for it to kind of bounce around in there. You could cogitate on it a little bit, think about it, refer to it, maybe leverage it in some initiatives within your communities. And then today, we had further discussions about that. So that's the rhythm that we would like to establish for the remaining meetings, this being this meeting and our April meeting for this year. And so we talked about recruitment with regards to that data set and our high flyers today. And then we're going to be doing the same thing with retention at the end of the day today. There's one other piece that I want to talk about a little bit, but we'll kind of shrink that piece based on time. And at the end, we're going to share some retention data that is really interesting, and we can also adjust in ways that might be useful for you. Jimmy, it looks like Jimmy's not on. Jimmy Hernandez is our research analyst that we've been working with to pull these data sets. And so when we look at that data set, it would be really useful for you to be kind of thoughtful with regards to what can we do to make that more useful for you. So we'll get to that in just a second, but there is one other kind of yearly data set that we've been offering. I think this is the 3rd year that we've offered it in some regards. And that is on the shared spreadsheet. Is the early college application data. So I'm going to share my screen. Feel free to jump into that data set. It will probably look familiar because we used the structure of the spreadsheet that we developed last year to build this one. But there's a few additional items in this spreadsheet this year. So what we have at the bottom is a number of tabs within this spreadsheet. You can see them down here that relate to the application data that you all completed for funding for this year. Oh, and speaking of funding, hopefully everyone knows that APIB and CE are all available in Utah grants now. We have approved almost all of those grants, the majority of them, but there still are a few folks that have not accepted what we call accepted that funding through Utah grants. All you need to do is throw in a budget and then put C Qualtrics application. You don't have to rewrite your whole Qualtrics thing, just put C Qualtrics application, we'll approve it. So if you've not done that, please do that. If you have not done that, you will be getting an email from us shortly if you have not already heard from us. I think the due date for AP and IB is today, right, Christy? Awesome. And for CE, it is the 7th of February, I think.
Let me just interject, Nate, if you don't mind. AP is all done. You guys are rocking it. It's all done. And AP is like 99% there. And you guys, all that are here have done it. So thank you. It's all done for everyone here. And the one Lea I'm working with for AP after this meeting, I will be working with them. So we're going good.
Awesome. Great to hear. And so, yeah, just attend to that so that you can actually receive your funds if you've not already done so. So back to this spreadsheet, what it provides is it's kind of a histogram with regards to the strategies, the student groups, the barriers, and the assets that we as a statewide community are pursuing, experiencing, and or leveraging. So what we see, a few kind of notices with this data sheet. Initially, we're going to give you more time to kind of go through this, but we'll have to compress this a little bit. So I'll share some observations. If you see any other observations I don't mention, feel free to throw them in the chat and or jump off mute, and you can allow everyone to hear them. So what we saw is, again, this year, students experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage are the student group that is most frequently focused on across the state within early college coursework. That is true in both CE and AP, although in IB, we see a different kind of, a different norm. Compared to last year, the frequency with which folks have focused on students experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage has gone down a little bit. There's a greater proportion of other student groups that are being focused on, with Hispanic and Latino students being the biggest jump. We saw the biggest difference in both CE and AP between last year and this year, with Hispanic and Latino students being the focus. The numbers here, it's also worth noting that this year's data, if you try to compare it to last year, you could choose multiple student groups last year to focus on. This year, you only could choose one. And so the total numbers in these frequency charts are a little lower this year compared to last year, because everyone just chose one student group. That doesn't mean that you're not focusing on any other student group. It's just for reporting purposes. Statute requires us to kind of identify one. So then we go to the strategy tab. And this year, I'm really excited about this data, because last year the strategy question was a fill-in on the application, but this year it was a choose, which means you chose it if you are doing it and you didn't choose it if you're not. This made the data curation process much easier. Speaking of the data curation process, I owe all of what has been done in concurrent enrollment to my colleague Etiana Coley-Mills. So if we could silently celebrate her, or you can come off and you can whoop, and like, all of this data is because of her hard work. She did an awesome job in this. Christy did some of the curation in AP and IB, and then Eva helped with that as well, because we lost Teresa in the fall. And so Eva has stepped in for Teresa as well. So she has been just like absolutely integral to this effort. And so when it was much easier this year for Eva to be able to just look at the data that was select, rather than trying to translate everyone's fill-in strategies into categories. And so what we get, as compared to the student group data, we get frequencies that are much higher this year, because you could select whichever ones made sense. And there's kind of an interesting trend that we see right around this cell 7 in concurrent enrollment, and like maybe a little higher, maybe like cell 6 in AP, where there are a lot of communities that are focusing on those things. And so those are things that we see being leveraged across the state. It'll be interesting over time to see what happens with, which strategies kind of catch fire and move up and down. But it's worth looking at the kind of distribution of this data and trying to identify, like, oh, where's the drop off? And I see it for concurrent enrollment between cell 7 and 8, and I see it for AP and like between 6 and 7 maybe. So do with that information what you will, but this also offers a kind of menu of strategies that you might consider applying. We already talked about with our shared notes, all kinds of innovative things that we know are working in New Ames and Tooele and Granite, based on the outcomes that they've seen with their student groups. And so use that as a kind of starting point, and then you can kind of buttress the strategies that you're choosing to leverage in next year and the coming years with these kind of frequency diagrams. We have the same circumstance for barriers. And then we also have these assets down here. We had barriers last year, so I won't speak much about that because of time, but I think this tab with assets is worth a look at some point, because it helps us remember that these students aren't only bringing challenges to our environment. It's not just like we have to like increase our supports in order to ensure that they're engaged. We also have this opportunity to leverage the assets that they bring in order to make the whole ecosystem better. And so this is a representation of the assets that everyone across the state has identified for their student group of focus. And I was just so like, it was so powerful for me to see that various points of view on all three of the assets was amongst the top kind of assets identified, because it means that heterogeneous communities have value, and that like as an educational institution, we're not just saying, oh, ability grouping is the way to go. That's how we're going to solve all the challenges that we're running into, because we know all the data that suggests tracking students in all cases, but the very top achievers and the very lowest achievers is bad for student achievement long-term. And that includes both the higher achievers as well as the lower achievers. The final three tabs that you'll see on this sheet are Lea Specific Data. When you click on the tab, it will take a little bit for it to load because there is a lot of text across this. It's basically your applications. This was something that was requested last year. We had included it again this year. And it's basically, oh, I wanted to know what New Ames put in their application because Kelly talked about those interesting strategies that they're doing. So you can go down to New Ames and you can see what was included in their application. The same is true for AP and IB. So there's three separate tabs, one LEA specific data tab for each program. Okay. So while I've been talking at you, maybe you've had a chance to start digging in, look at your own community's data. We have about 3 minutes for questions, comments, and/or concerns before we move to our final kind of data set for the day. Wonders, maybe some observations. I see people deep in thought. It may be too early. If you were listening to me and you're just looking at the data now. I didn't look at the chat. I will stop sharing and pay more attention to the chat.
I just have a quick observation. I just think it's always so powerful to meet like this because it's good to hear that other schools are in the same boat with maybe what the challenges we're facing now. That other ones, like it was great to go into our breakout room. But then I also think there's a lot of strength too that comes when we realize, hey, we're not the only one. That other schools are facing these same challenges, and build those relationships to network with each other to be able to bounce ideas off. So that was just something that struck me as you were talking, Nathan.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. We appreciate that. We appreciate all of you being here. Looks like Allison says, I can only speak for me. So interesting to look at the data you just shared. Allison, you feel free to speak for me too. I think like this data set is just fascinating, and there's a lot to kind of glean from it. Any final questions, comments, concerns, wonders, observations? This data set will live here for the foreseeable future, maybe into eternity. We'll see what happens. No, Allison, no offense taken. I totally understand that if you look at the agenda, the intent was to give you time to digest. We were going to have independent time, and then we're going to do group time. But with Yushi extended sharing, and it didn't happen. But you will have an extended amount of time to do that, and maybe we'll try to build a little more time to look at and/or dig into this data in our April meeting. Read my mind, Christy. Okay, so because we only
I have one question, Nate.
Please go for it, Jesse.
Or Christy. Is this data set that we can share with principals? I meet with our high school principals usually monthly. I'd love to dig through this with them. I'm assuming it's open to share.
There's nothing proprietary in this data set. We had to check on that last year before we shared the Lea specific like tabs. And there's nothing proprietary in here.
Awesome. Okay.
Totally. Thanks, Jesse. Right. So we only get to meet 4 times a year for 2 hours each time. And so I know that we kind of overload you with information, and that's partially by design. And we want to be able to provide some context for a few circumstances while we have you captive. I was going to say something more like supportive, but I'm going to go with that route since we only have 14 minutes remaining. And so this other data set that we just pulled is the analog to the recruitment data that we gave you last time, and is also linked in the recruitment high flyers section of the agenda. So if you scroll down, and as you may have heard me mention earlier, we have these 4 success criteria that we landed on last year. So we start with recruitment, getting students into early college experiences. And then there's also this conversation about retention. How do we keep students in early college experiences? I think that Granite, Tooele, and New Ames all kind of mentioned, in addition to their recruitment efforts, that there were also some retention efforts in there. We heard Sherry talking about the idea of kind of counselor interventions, where if a student says they want to drop the course, they're not just dropped automatically, that there's a kind of intervention process that goes into play. And what an innovative way to ensure that the community is doing everything they can in order to support that student in participating in that course, even if they have moments of like, oh, I don't think I can do it. So what we've done is we curated a data set that might need a little bit of explanation because it's kind of big. Again, it is LEA specific. Unlike the recruitment data that we shared, we did not just include the high flyers in this case. We included data connected to everyone. And then we will take some, we wanted your feedback before we had the conversation about high flyers with regards to what is useful for this data. So that we can pull that group and identify who can share at the April meeting, kind of give them a podium to be able to share. So take a look at this data. It's a big data set. I want to do a little explaining first. So this, and I didn't, the other tabs other than comparative data, I'll change the tab name so that this is clear. The comparative data is based on completion percentage of early college coursework. So we have that data broken into there's an all students column, and then there's also comparative columns. And so what that looks like is there's an Asian white completion percentage and a Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, American Indian completion percentage. So you can compare the experiences of the groups in a student group and not in a student group. The race is a little different, but for example, like economically disadvantaged, we can see economically disadvantaged students compared to students not experiencing that. And so in some cases, we see parity. We see, really similar numbers. And in other cases, we see significant differences. What I cannot tell you at this time, and we're hopeful that we'll have some semblance of an answer by next time, is like, how big's too big? Is a 3% difference, like, is that too big? There's a lot of variables that come into this conversation, and without getting into an advanced statistics course, which I have a background in mathematics. So if anyone wants to do that, I'm happy to stay on. We can talk about effect sizes and maybe R values. It'll be really great. But it's hard to give a really concrete comparison for how big is too big. The things to consider here are how big is your community. If your community is really small, that means one student has a comparatively larger change in percentage when they either take or don't take a course. And so what we've done in the other tabs is we don't just give you percentage differences, we give you credits earned and credits attempted differences as well. So this helps you to understand it's not only a percentage difference, it's also a magnitude difference. This many credits were earned versus this many credits attempted. And so right now, that's our primary measure of retention is, did the student attempt it, which means they were enrolled in the class, did they earn the credit? That is not a perfect comparison, but from the data that we have, it was the best that we came up with initially. So take another 2 or 3 minutes, dig into this data, and then right before we leave, I want to come back together to feel free to answer or ask questions as we go, but I want feedback on what we could do to tweak this data to make it useful for your communities. If I can share one other thing that I want to point out. If you look at, say, like Grand versus Granite School District, you'll notice an alarming difference in completion rates. This is early college coursework overall. All of these other tabs are early college. Well, I guess all the tabs are early college coursework combined. And so completion rate in AP does not mean finishing the course. It means earning credit via the test. And so if your community has a bunch of AP and concurrent enrollment, you will see that your completion rates are going to be way lower than a community that only has concurrent enrollment. We've already talked to our research analysts about breaking these out by program so that you can you can compare kind of apples to apples, so to speak. But like when you look at Grand versus Granite, you can see a 96% completion rate in Grand and a 73% completion rate in Granite. That's because Granite has a bunch of AP coursework and Grand has 0. Okay, so we want to respect your time and we would love for you to spend 2 minutes at the very end of this conversation offering us your feedback regarding the meeting and the survey so that we can continue to use these meetings to best serve your interests, which leaves us 3 minutes roughly. If anyone has feedback on how we could make this data more useful. we will be identifying high flyers between now and April and reaching out to those high flyers in order that they can share some of the retention strategies that are demonstrating to be effective. And if what can we do to make this data more useful for you?
Nate, if you want to look at the chat, there are several questions that were thrown in there that may help us to answer those for them.
Oh, good. It's Sandra, right? The answer is yes. We will be able to view the data CE, IB, and AP specific. It's not ready yet. We'll send it out in the I think that we'll have it ready by the newsletter when we send. I think the newsletter is going out next week. Christy, is that right? Perfect. So we'll make sure that we send out the finalized CMOL next week, as well as this data broken down by concurrent enrollment APIB, as opposed to and in addition to early college overall, so that you have both accessible.
So Nathan, I also listed, someone else had listed by school, and that would be helpful. But the other piece is by area, so math, English, because if we're trying to impact something, the more granular it can be, the more likely we can place strategies to target the problems.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I'll record these as we go. Data by school and even by subject, I heard. I know we can get by school. The subject one, I'm having a hard time envisioning what that would look like. Just like it might have to be individual reports or something. I'll talk to our data analyst about it. I can see what we can do.
But by school would be very helpful because when there's a lot of discrepancy, particularly in a large district. So to really hone in on where we need to focus our efforts, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And once we do the school, it would probably be easier just to kind of figure out by the content areas just from that. So. Okay,
cool. I like it. Just to make sure everyone understands, A and W is Asian or white from a racial standpoint, so that that tab makes sense. The data, oh man, there was lots of questions. I'm sorry I wasn't looking at these as we were going. The data came from, that's a big question. Let's do this. Stick around if you want to know specifically where the data came from. We got it from our like statewide data sets, and we compared the enrollments of students October 1 to the end of the year with regards to credits earned and credits attempted. Yeah, I can be a little more specific, and I may have to phone a friend if you need more specific data than that. They're great questions. Okay, we have, can this be in Tableau? Jesse, yes, it can. And you're gonna have to wait a little bit. It is my hope that at the end of the year, once we have identified what data sets are useful for us connected to the success criteria, that we'll build pages in our early college dashboard that you can navigate this by year, by category, and by school at that point. And we'll make it happen as fast as we can. It's not going to be immediate for sure. Time frame is this data from? This is this school year, Christine. And well, that's not true. This is this allocation cycle, which is last school year. This is based on last school year. Out by high school, yes. Did I miss any questions that are, well, I'll tell you what, if you have more pressing questions, I'm happy to stick around. I know everyone has meetings as well. We would be so appreciative if you could jump in and take our exit survey. It's only a few questions long. That is to ensure that these meetings are valuable for you. Kelly, thanks for your verbal feedback on this. Anytime you have interests, wants, needs, reach out to Christy and I. We will make sure that it happens within these meetings. Thanks so much for your time, everyone. It is 12 o'clock noon on a Friday. Hope everyone has exciting weekend plans. Love you all. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.